All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for showing up this morning to officially welcome back Kelly Kroskoff as the president of basketball business operations for the Indiana.
Nobody expected this. The woman sitting at the top of the entire organization, the president of the Indiana Fever, finally stated the silent part out loud. Her comments aroused the entire basketball music community in addition to raising eyebrows. For the first time, the true nature of that franchise's music, politics, pressure, locker room dynamics, and the conflict between building a champion and a brand was revealed. And when you find out the full story, everything you think is true about Caitlin Clark's situation in Indiana is changed. Now let's go back to the beginning of this story. Before Caitlin Clark ever wore a Hoosier uniform, Indiana was among the least famous teams in professional basketball. There is talk about 6 wins in 2026, 5 wins in 2022, and 13 wins in 2026. For nearly 10 years, they were a joke. No fans, no buzz, no spotlight. No cameras would be present. The crowd weren't filling the seats. The WNBA scene had completely changed, regardless of the Fever. That was the reality. A once proud franchise became a mere afterthought. But no one in that front office could have planned what happened, no matter how hard they tried. Everything changed when the first overall pick in the 2026 WNBA draft walked into the room. Caitlin Clark did more than just reduce the temperature. She changed the league as a whole. The audiences were sold out everywhere she performed. There were record-breaking TV ratings, jerseys flying off the shelves, and a media frenzy never seen in women's basketball before. Music, really, ever. In the middle of that eruption, the organization had to make a choice. Would they ride the wave or try to steer it in a different direction? That's when the whole story starts to get interesting. Because when the Fever required someone at the top who realized exactly what they had, a once-in-a-generation athlete who was single-handedly transforming what was possible for women's sports, the front office made a move that shocked a lot of people. Their new president of business operations and basketball is Kelly Kroskoff. On paper, it made logical. Kroskoff had first-hand experience with the Fever, having built the team that won the 2012 championship. With all the anticipated enthusiasm, the squad introduced her. But something in her initial news conference's rhetoric raised issues that many at the time chose to overlook, but months later would come back to ruin the entire firm. Because the warning signs were hidden in plain sight, nobody saw them until it was too late. Everything broke down at this point. July 2026. The absence of Caitlin Clark due to an injury is a concern for the Fever. Clark has only played in 11 games this season due to a groin issue that has been bothering her for weeks. Fans are annoyed. The team is close to qualifying for the postseason. The pressure is rising. Amid all of that, the internet uncovers something concealed in Kroskoff's October 2026 address that most people had entirely overlooked on the day when the footage from his first press conference mysteriously reappears on social media. During the press conference, Kroskoff looked straight into the cameras and said, "This is about the Indiana Fever. Indeed, Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark are our core performers, and we intend to continue developing them. But I want this team to be a long-lasting brand, like Apple, and a national leader. Akin to Apple." That was all that was needed. In just a few hours, the video went viral, and its fan base grew rapidly. Because many folks didn't hear that vision in that words. It was a warning. Such a reaction was unprecedented in the Fever front office. In addition to being irate, fans were well-organized, noisy, and difficult to ignore. The analogy to Apple struck a different chord because of what Apple actually accomplished. Steve Jobs, one visionary, laid the groundwork for their whole identity. And as soon as he departed, the entire empire nearly collapsed. As a result, when the Fever president used that exact analogy, Clark supporters saw something in it that appeared revealing, as though the organization already saw Clark as an element rather than the main focus. On social media, a fan reacted to enduring brands that share their beliefs. Apple became a global icon thanks to Steve Jobs, the company's star and visionary. Another fan also didn't hold back. They say the Fever will admit that they squandered the best opportunity in women's sports history when Clark finally decides she's had enough of a front office dumpster fire. The message boards, comment sections, and replies all reflected the same fundamental feeling. You don't downplay the most important player this team has ever had, and you continue to pay attention to her. The criticism wasn't simply noise. It was a choice. And someone in that organization became aware of how serious the situation was getting. Because a few hours after the video became popular, Krauskopf's entire account vanished. Completely absent. There was silence rather than a message or an explanation where there had been a social media presence just a few days earlier. It gets considerably more complicated at this point. One of Clark's closest teammates, Lexi Hull, went down for a profile in Glamour magazine and didn't hold back. Hull stated that almost no one wearing a Fever uniform had previously been willing to make public, but that everyone in the league already knew because of the media attention and the supporters who have supported us since Caitlin arrived. I think there is some jealousy over the Fever because the players on the court, the ones who actually suit up next to Caitlin Clark every night. She went one step further and revealed that teams from all over the league have been talking openly about things like, "We can't let the Fever win," in their own locker rooms. Hull's comments exposed an unsettling reality that had been emerging for 2 seasons. The Fever does more than just play hoops these days. Because of the players on their squad, opposing teams have singled them out every time they step onto the court. And not due to the team's efforts, but rather to one individual. Sophie Cunningham took it a step farther. The player who made it clear early on that taking cheap shots at her teammate would have consequences and who established herself as Clark's enforcer on the floor had already come forward and confirmed what the entire league had been speculating about. "Before I joined Indiana, Cunningham said I heard it. When she was still in Phoenixing physically attacked. That the situation around Clark was beyond their capacity. It spread swiftly. It was either replayed everywhere or became part of the background noise that accompanied the Fever into their second season together. Unless, of course, Hubbard and Diana Terrace compelled Clark to make an appearance as a guest on another March Madness program. Music. She took it on head-on. She wasn't angry. She didn't behave defensively. She was remarkably calm about it. Basically, you get used to people thinking they know what happens behind closed doors when, in reality, they don't. Music. The colleagues who were there in that locker room also kept encouraging her. After Clark recovered from her injuries, her teammates flooded the floor during the 2026 playoffs. After the game, they cut off her interview. They showed up for her at unexpected times. When the Fever won the Commissioner Cup, there was genuine celebration in the locker room. Laughing and genuinely happy for one another, players linked in a way that didn't read like an act. This is what the media hasn't yet put together. The Fever narrative never centered on whether or not Caitlin Clark's teammates liked her. It was about whether the front office, which oversaw them all, was ready to surround her with the necessary components and devote all of their attention to the project. The difference is that Boston had a close relationship with Clark because the links were real on the court level. Aaliyah. Lexi Hull was cautious. Sophie Cunningham and other new players were gushing over Clark before they had even played a game together. Michaela Timpson, the rookie who made the final roster, showed genuine respect for Clark in a manner that is hard to replicate. After the expansion draft, Clark wrote comments on Instagram for 2 of her teammates, stating things like, "Cub I love you," for Christy Wallace and "My Aussie for life," for Chloe BBY. The affection was genuine. These were real relationships. But contacts are not enough to win titles. And that was the tension at the heart of it all. The entirety of Kelly Krauskopf's comments from that October 2026 press conference, not just the Apple soundbite, contained something that many people missed in their haste to voice their disapproval. Krauskopf talked about the long game when she said that she wanted the Fever to be a lasting brand, that sometimes it takes a generation to reach the next level, and that Caitlin Clark was 10 years old when Indiana won its lone championship in 2016. Perhaps the organization had been working for someone else all along, planting the seeds for a 10-year-old who would find inspiration in what the Fever was doing at the time. Whether you view that as vision or deception depends on how you perceive the front office's actual priorities. But this is undeniable. Fans that visited the Fever starting in 2026 did not show up because of a brand. They came because of a player. They drove for hours at a time. The WNBA had never seen payments like the ones they made. The number of spectators had never been predicted by the league. Additionally, when Clark's ailments kept him from playing in ways that could be measured, documented, and publicly acknowledged, ticket sales declined. TV viewership fell. The harsh reality of what Clark represented to that franchise was unavoidable. But the team, the institution, and the brand kept coming up in the organization's top messaging, as if the person attracting all of that attention was somehow separate from it. During that news conference, Kroskopf made a statement that was very noteworthy. If you are a smart basketball player and you see how Caitlin Clark plays, you would want to play alongside her, she said. And it turned out to be more true than even she probably recognized at the time, as the Fever's recruiting success had quietly evolved into one of the WNBA's most captivating narratives. Players had to take pay cuts in order to fly to Indiana. For veterans, the opportunity to play with Clark was the determining factor. Packed stadiums weren't the only places where Clark's fan base existed. Because of the environment it was creating, players wanted to be a part of something bigger than a normal WNBA season. Despite this, the Fever had grown to be one of the league's most popular destinations. Not because of a brand strategy, but rather because of a basketball player who enhanced everyone around her and filled buildings wherever she went. Let's move on to 2026 and whatever the Fever does after that. The franchise lost two players in the WNBA expansion draft: Chloe BBY to Portland and Christy Wallace to Toronto. Clark herself had to endure a season that was supposed to be her breakthrough second year, but instead it was a nightmare of injuries that limited her to just 13 games during the regular season. Despite scoring 16.5 points, 8.5 assists, and 5 rebounds per game, she was selected for the All-Star game. Still was the talk of the league even though she was dressed in civilian clothes and sitting on the sidelines. Beneath it all, Kroskopf described the Fever's $78 million performance complex as the foundation for the next generation. Even though it won't open until 2026, the music facility is meant to be the kind of home base that attracts elite talent for many years to come. The parts are in position. The question is whether the people in charge of making judgments above the court are aware of what they have and whether they intend to take action before it's too late. Beneath every disagreement over the Fever's headquarters, every problem with Clark's teammates, and every passionate remark about friction in the locker room, there is a bigger reality that is actually much simpler than any of it. This squad went from winning 5 games a season to being the most watched team in women's basketball in just 1 year. This isn't a reconstruction. It's a revolution. Moreover, revolutions are not the result of brand strategy boards. They happen because of once-in-a-generation artists who make music more captivating, competitive, and enjoyable for everyone around them. Fans perceived the danger in the Fever president's claim to build a brand comparable to Apple, which sparked a frenzy. The same danger that brought down previous franchises that tried to use a logo in place of its star. The athletes in that locker room know the truth better than anyone else. They have played by it and witnessed it firsthand. And as seen by every moving sideline exchange and post, what they consistently say in every social media post and interview while playing with Caitlin Clark isn't just different. This is an opportunity that doesn't come around twice. The Fever would benefit from making sure that the people in control of that organization share the same beliefs. One thing is certain, thus the window is open right now. The question is not whether the opportunity exists. Whether they are daring enough to actually surprise everyone is the question. The woman sitting at the top of the entire organization, the president of the Indiana Fever, finally stated the silent part out loud. And more than just eyebrows were raised by her comments. The world of basketball was ignited by it. The locker room dynamics, politics, pressure, music, and the battle to build a champion and a brand all broke down for the first time. And when you hear the complete tale, everything you think is true about Caitlin Clark's situation in Indiana is changed. Now let's go back to the beginning of this story. Before Caitlin Clark ever slipped on a Hoosier uniform, Indiana was among the least famous teams in professional basketball. There is talk of 6 wins in 2026, 5 wins in 2026, and 13 wins in 2023. For nearly 10 years, they were a joke. No fans, no buzz, and no limelight. No cameras.